At the age of 59, I wasn't looking or feeling my best. I had low energy. I was tired all the time, and I was losing muscle, gaining fat, and what I had done in the past for my diet and exercise were no longer serving me. I wanted to do better for myself and started doing some research and landed on the Faster Way. This science-based nutrition and fitness program is like no other. It includes both food guidance and daily workouts that are tailored to fit your goals, and it's perfect for midlife women. I'm excited to start working with clients and introduce you to a sustainable, healthy lifestyle that can lay the foundation for this next phase of life. Are you ready to prioritize you? Check the show notes of this episode and let's connect. Now, on to the show. Health, wellness, fitness, and everything in between. We're removing the taboo from what really matters in midlife. I'm your host, Michelle Folan, and this is Asking for a Friend. With the many changes we experience in perimenopause and menopause, maybe some of the most profound shifts come with our relationships with our bodies and our sexuality. Yes, our bodies have changed, and the desires we once had may feel greatly diminished, but how do we get back some of that connectedness with that woman who has served us so well through many life transitions? Gabriella Espinosa is a menopause and sexual wellness coach and host of the podcast Pleasure in the Pause, which is dedicated to empowering midlife women to own their pleasure, power, and purpose through menopause and beyond. Gabriella's guidance takes women on a journey of self-exploration, trust, and knowing to get to the other side wiser, stronger, sexier, and more empowered. Welcome to Asking for a Friend, Gabriella Espinosa.
Thank you so much, Michelle. That was a wonderful introduction.
I had you on my list for quite some time as a guest. And then when I saw you started the podcast, it was like the stars aligned. And I said, oh, no, I got to get her on because I want to hear more about that. But first, I would love to hear more about where you're from, where you went to school, and any kind of family details you'd like to share.
Sure. And I love that you found me via the podcast. I've met so many wonderful people since I started my podcast. So it is an exciting pivot for me just to get to have conversations like this with people like you. So thank you so much. So I was born and raised in Houston, Texas. My parents are from Ecuador, South America, and they immigrated to the U.S. in the 60s. My parents worked hard and stressed, getting an education, never stressed getting married or having kids, which you would think they would have done, given that we come from a culture that, prioritizes that and makes that something to strive for most women. But no, it was just really focusing on education and traveling and exploring the world. And so when I finished my undergraduate and graduate degree here at the University of Texas in Austin, I left Texas thinking that I would never, ever come back. I was like, Texas feels too small for me. So that's what I did. I traveled the world for about 30 years and made a full circle. I've come back to Texas, back to my home state. And it really feels like a wonderful homecoming because, I feel like I did what I set out to do. I set out to travel and explore and meet new people and expand my mind. And in the meantime, some parts of Texas have done that. But for the most part, I'm living in an area in Austin where I do feel I fit in, and that sense of community building exists here, and meeting a lot of wonderful midlife women who are on the same path as I am.
Yeah. And you are really involved in the menopause community. I see you're attending all these great meetings, and I found that Oh gosh, you would be such a great guest for the show because you are hearing so many different thought leaders out there that are really passionate about menopause and just women in midlife in general. And because it was funny, I was looking back at your career history and I was super curious how your path morphed into menopause and sexual wellness. Like, what propelled you to believe that there was a need to have this conversation?
Yeah, well, my journey into this career path is a very personal one, and one that was really prompted by my disbelief and anger, really, quite frankly, that no one was having these conversations about a pivotal life stage for all of us and the changes that accompany it. So, my journey started about 15 years ago when perimenopause came along totally unannounced, and it was like a light switched off, and I was left totally in the dark, especially when it came to my libido. So, my husband and I had a very short courtship that went from this fiery, passionate desire that you often experience when you fall in love and get married. And so we got married, we met, got married, and went straight into having 3 children in a span of 5 years. I was already in my late 30s. So mind you, I had lived a life, I had traveled, as I said, and I was, I just happened to meet my soulmate at 36 years old. And I thought, okay, well, this is it. Maybe this is what I meant to step into now. But it all happened so fast and furiously. Had the 3 kids, and I was in my 40s when I was done. Went straight from childbirthing to breastfeeding to play dates to being, the soccer mom, and straight into perimenopause. But I had no idea what was happening. And, I experienced that anxiety that came out of nowhere, insomnia, low mood. And of course, this had a knock-on effect into my intimate life. And what I realized was I had no understanding or language to communicate what was going on, either with my husband, with my doctor, or even my girlfriends. And they all seemed to be doing fine. And there was this enormous sense of shame that came over me that I was getting old and that, my sex life was over, that my husband was going to leave me. All these thoughts came racing through my head. So I just decided to take things into my own hands and spent the next 15 years. I traveled the world again, learning from renowned experts in sexuality, traveling to conferences about menopause, perimenopause, and really researching, exploring the most powerful mind-body tools to really step into this next phase of life, really prioritizing my pleasure, prioritizing my health, and deepening connection to myself.
Okay. There are some amazing voices out there in the menopause space right now. And I know you're in contact with many of them right now. But when you started the Women's Body Wisdom back in 2011, that was not the case. There were no conversations. And you even said that yourself. There were really those resources. How do you think you were able to break through the stigma of talking about menopause and midlife intimacy?
Yeah, I'm really so grateful to those doctors who are now educating and correcting decades of misinformation and myths around menopause with true and tested evidence, right? For me, it was more about sharing my story to empower other women to fully embrace this transition. I think I had done a lot of the work by that time, by 2011. I had done a lot of the work to release limiting beliefs and shame I had about reaching this life stage. And so I started sharing my story I trained as a yoga teacher in my yoga classes and workshops that I led. And then I started sharing it on social media. And so many women would message me and thank me for speaking up. They told me they felt seen, they felt less alone, and that they felt the same. And that by my speaking up, they were going to take action to learn more about this transition. So that snowballed into my holding women's circles, workshops. I started an online platform called My Menopause Story, where I invited women to share their menopause stories. And it was incredible the amount of stories that I received on a weekly basis. Women really wanting to feel seen and heard through a transition that had been silenced for so long. And so it just felt like the right thing to do. It felt like that was my calling, to be of service to others by sharing my story. And I knew that if I shared my story and I touched the lives of, one person on any given day, that I was fully, serving my purpose, my why, which was really to empower women to embrace and fully step into this stage of life, feeling in their power and fully in their pleasure, and finding some sense of purpose through this transition.
I love what you're saying here, because I truly believe that this can be the best time of our lives. There's so much freeing that comes with this stage of life. Many of us are empty nesters or soon to be empty nesters. We may have a little money in the bank. There's just, I don't know. I think it can be the best time of our lives, but I think there's this self-exploration or discovery that you talk about that needs to kind of happen first. How do you get women to start to look at themselves a little differently? Because we've been in this little box of mom, wife, and for so long. How do you get them out of that?
Yeah, that's such an important point that you raise. And this is what I call the inner work of menopause. I think with all the awareness and education going on about menopause, it can tend to be focused on the physical symptoms and how to manage or alleviate them. And I think this tends to lead women to search for a quick fix, almost like putting a Band-Aid, hoping that they will be able to carry on like normal, just like they did before, multitasking, putting their needs last, being of service to others. But the truth is, it is a life transformation. Menopause can feel life altering, but I also feel it can be a life affirming transformation. And like any transformation, it can be confusing, painful, and frustrating. But transformation is uncomfortable because we're changing, not because of the changes that are visible on the outside, but because of the changes that are happening on the inside, who we're becoming on the inside. So I feel this is a wonderful time to pause and reflect on who we're becoming on the inside. How do we want to feel and be in this next stage of life? And it really requires, a pivot. It requires us to get to know ourselves better, empower ourselves with knowledge, upgrade our physical, mental, and emotional health, to really sit down and value our lived experience and wisdom, and set boundaries, prioritize our own needs, our own pleasure, and really see it as a new chapter in our life to be embraced and not feared. So all of that requires deep reflection, this journey of self-discovery, as you referred to it. And it's that sort of inner knowing, that intuition that you can get to the other side, feeling more empowered, feeling sexier, feeling wiser and more purposeful.
Yeah. I think personally, this time of our lives, because we do have that life experience, can be so empowering, because we are better at setting boundaries and speaking our mind, speaking our truth, right? Women at this age may not have the body confidence that they once had. And I know this has to be a challenge for you when you coach. Our bodies have changed, which can create, I don't know, a significant roadblock maybe to intimacy and pleasure and self-acceptance. Any advice how we can overcome this and better connect with our bodies at this age?
I think midlife is really a time of making peace with our bodies. Many of us have already spent most of our lives judging, dieting, trying to change our bodies to meet unrealistic standards of beauty or fitness. And then we get to midlife and we feel we are swimming against a very high tide because changes are happening that we simply cannot control. And sadly, this leads to further feeling that our bodies have betrayed us and that we need to be fixed in some way. And I feel as women, we are our worst critics. No one judges our bodies more than we do. And I just want women to feel that they are enough in the bodies that they inhabit, and that you are more than the number on the scale or the bikini that you want to fit into this summer. Our bodies hold so much intelligence. This is the body wisdom that I often talk about. They carry our stories, our lived experience, and they do so many amazing things for us. And I'm not saying don't exercise, don't go to the gym. We need to eat well, look after our bodies, but we need to focus on befriending our bodies and building a more compassionate relationship with them. So I asked women to consider, how are you caring for your body right now? Are you listening to your body's cues for nourishment, for rest, for movement, for pleasure? Are you speaking kindly to your body? And how can you regard your body with the mutual respect, gratitude, and trust of a true friend? Because this relationship is going to carry us through the next half of our lives. And so it really is about forming that compassionate relationship and friendship. And I know it's hard, and I know it can sound a little bit too out there or too woo, but it really, that is, again, the inner work that we have to do with ourselves. Just make peace with our bodies and not strive for perfection.
I love that message. It's such a great first step in looking at what are your goals, like what are your health priorities, right? Because it's really about being healthy, not looking a certain way.
Absolutely.
And so I think that's a fabulous message. Thank you for that. I do want to talk a little bit about the role of communication, particularly with our partners. And I know this is very important to the process, I would assume, but how do we make this more comfortable? Because I know women want to talk about their needs and, when it comes to pleasure or just their daily needs of how they want to be treated and the level of communication that they want with their partner. How do we make that conversation comfortable?
Yeah, I think communication, as we're moving through the menopause transition and so much is changing, is an essential part of any healthy relationship. And the sooner you start it, the better. And it can feel quite vulnerable, especially if you've been seen as the one that holds the family together, manages the household, contributes to shared income, right? To feel that, oh my gosh, I am not going to be able to step up to this image that everyone has of me, and that I really need to be seen from this lens of compassion with regards to this major life stage. And it's really about communicating with your partner the physical changes that you're undergoing. So again, understanding what those changes are. So empowering yourself with the knowledge. As we move through menopause, we not only experience the outward symptoms or the emotional symptoms, either the weight gain that contribute to loss of body image, or the stress or sense of overwhelm, the stereotypical symptoms of hot flashes and night sweats that can contribute to, interrupted sleep, and that can contribute to our mood.
Yeah.
It has a domino effect. But then there are the other changes, right? The less spoken about changes. There's a constellation of symptoms known as genitourinary syndrome of menopause. So as our estrogen levels decline, we have estrogen receptors all over our bodies, but especially in our vulval area and vaginal tract. So that can lead to vaginal dryness, pain, discomfort. It can lead to altered sensitivity and affect how you experience pleasure and intimacy with your partner. So it's really so important to just start that open communication with your partner to adjust expectations and explore alternatives and it's a great time to find alternatives, uh, ways to be intimate and find pleasure and other ways. So just being clear in your communication allows you to express your evolving needs and desires. And so I often say, create a clear and intentional space, right? When you're going to do this. So make it clear that you want to start a conversation that is judgment free. You're going to be free of any distractions. Choose a time when you and your partner are both relaxed. I often have my deepest, most intimate conversations when I'm going out for a walk with my partner, or perhaps sharing a meal, or just cuddling on the sofa, and really take time to listen to each other without interrupting. So you set those ground rules. Honey, I want to have this conversation with you. Could you just be a witness to what I have to say, and just listen attentively without responding. And then I'll give you a chance to respond, and I'll listen and do the same. So communication is a two-way street. And then I say, let's ditch the blame game, right? It's so easy to blame our partners that they don't understand. We think that they're mind readers and that they should understand, but that the truth is they don't understand. And it's really on us to communicate with them what we're going through. And so I always say, communicate, start with I statements, focus on your own feelings and needs. I'm curious to explore this instead of, you never do this, or I hate it when you do this. And again, don't assume that your partner is a mind reader. Let them know that the changes that your body is going through, what feels different for you. Share some ideas of how you'd like to be touched, new things you'd like to try, what will make you feel more comfortable, and be open to feedback. It's all about growing, learning, and evolving together. And if something isn't working, it doesn't mean that it's all over or it's all doom and gloom. You can always start again. If it doesn't work out the first time, you can have a laugh about it, have a conversation about it, and don't get on the defensive, and just have an opportunity to hear each other out, and then just start again.
Yeah.
Try again. And then just also embrace the discomfort. It's going to be awkward. Talking about intimacy and sexuality can be awkward, especially if you don't have a habit of it. But just keep the mood light, curious, and playful, and admit to it feeling awkward, that feeling vulnerable, feeling, that it makes you nervous. And the more comfortable you are with the awkwardness, the easier it will be to have those deeper conversations.
I think this is really great advice. And I think most men are happy to have the conversation, because at their core, I do believe that men do want to please their partners. We have to accept the fact that men and women are very different. How we're wired, what our needs are to get us to that point where we want to be intimate, and so to be able to tell your partner, look, foreplay for me starts at 9 a.m. It's how I'm treated throughout the day. That vibe I get from you all day long gets me to that place. Whereas, guys, they can probably step up to the plate pretty quickly, but they want to feel cherished. They want to feel desired. So there's some commonalities there. And then there's some places where I think we're really, really different.
Yeah, that's such a wonderful way to put it. And I think just having the spirit of generosity alive in your relationship. So often we can tend to hold back because we're feeling that resentment rising, or our partners maybe don't understand, but really initiating any kind of intimacy from a place of generosity, giving and receiving. And again, keeping the lines of communication open, and saying the things that that will make you feel more closer and more intimate with your partner. And if that's starting at 9 a.m. with a peck on the cheek, or a hug, or a phone call or a text during the day, I know that partners will want to respond. We need to teach them these skills.
Yeah, I think in creating that environment too, and creating that environment of open discussion is certainly a great first step. Your coaching includes yoga. You do nutritional counseling. Will you address how these kind of go hand in hand as you're creating a healthy foundation with your clients?
So yoga has always been my go-to practice. I always say it's been my constant companion through all my life stages, from busy professional to pregnancy, motherhood, and now menopause. And it's just been my practice, my go-to practice for connecting with myself. And I find yoga helps women find calm in the storm of so many of the symptoms. In yoga, we practice breathing and conscious relaxation, which switches on your rest and relax nervous system mode. And from this place of your mind and body feeling calm and grounded, it can reduce anxiety, stress, overwhelm, and you're more open and receptive to pleasure. We know that stress is the driver of so many menopausal symptoms, and in particular anxiety. So yoga helps us really to change how we perceive and respond to stress. And it cultivates this inner awareness, this inner listening. When you hear, listen to your body, what does that really mean? It's about really listening to those cues that your body is sending you for nourishment, for movement, for rest, for pleasure, for connection. So often we are so busy and we're suppressing, we're pushing down those messages, those cues. So I really feel that yoga is such an incredible tool to broaden that lens of awareness. And in regards to nutrition, there are some pretty simple and key pillars for nutrition. I don't like to say that I'm taking away things from your diet, but that I'm adding things. We're adding more protein, we're adding more greens and leafy veg, we're adding more essential fatty acids, more probiotic foods that are great for a healthy gut. And so it's really all about what can you add to your diet in terms of what can you take away. And a lot of this requires changing some habits. So that's what I mostly work on in my coaching, is really changing some of those habits we have acquired over the years so that we can really optimize and upgrade our physical health to the best version possible.
Yeah, your message about nutrition is loud and clear. And I want to say that I think if we can focus on getting more of those good things, like more protein, more fiber, more veggies, all those things in our diet, then we tend to crave the sweets and the really bad stuff less often. But you got to get yourself properly fueled with the right nutrients during the day to make that happen. So,
well, I do think when you do focus on all of that, on adding all of that goodness to your diet, there is more room
Sure.
for that dessert, for the sweets, without feeling guilty, without thinking you're being bad, right? There's more room for that. There's more permission for those sweet things. So I don't say to eliminate those things. I just say, try to add more of all this goodness, because the cravings for those sweet things will decline when you focus on all of these other things. That's a surprising the surprising benefit. When you focus on eating, all the things you mentioned, you will see your cravings for sweets decline. And then when the time comes to enjoy a wonderful dessert, when you're out to dinner, you can give yourself permission and you can just say, yes, there is room for this.
Well, you're all about pleasure. You should have dessert. I think I don't ever want anyone to feel deprived, right? You should be able to have the dessert every once in a while. Come on, we got to live.
Absolutely. I was just on a 2-week holiday with my husband, and we went to Europe and Italy and the UK. And, we're both foodies. It was so nice just to get out of the standard, okay, I'm going to eat my protein and my just standard kind of things that we cook for ourselves. We cook very, very healthy foods, to just, be able to have those 2 weeks and not put any limitations, having the dessert, having the
Pasta.
the beef Wellington, the pasta, the fish and chips. It felt so wonderful. And yeah, now I'm back into my regular routine, and I don't really want to eat all of those things. I want to go back to my normal routine of how I'm used to eating back home. And it feels good that I just allowed myself that permission just to enjoy and prioritize the pleasure of eating those wonderful foods when I'm on holiday.
Yes. And we have to give ourselves permission to do those things. What can your clients expect when working with you and the services you offer? I know you do one-on-one. Do you do group coaching as well?
Yeah, I do have a group coaching course, which is all about pleasure and upgrading your pleasure. So when I work one-to-one with someone, the journey starts with you, your lifestyle, your community, your relationship to food, to exercise, how you digest stress, how you sleep. And so we look at those habits, right? Those habits that you have, and we work to shift those habits. We set goals. I hold you accountable to those goals that you set for yourself. And then I provide practices that are based in yoga and breath work and some somatic movements so that you can reconnect to your body and explore a lot of the shifting narratives so that you can have a greater awareness of how you want to feel and be in the next phase of life. And then in the group coaching, I guide women through a 3-month experience. I try to keep it intimate, 10 to 15 women. It's a 6-module course that I've developed where we look at the principles of pleasure, how to regulate your nervous system so that you can be receptive to more pleasure. I teach you all about your sexual anatomy. It's amazing how little we've been taught. So it's a little bit of sex education. It's a little bit about how to regulate your nervous system to be receptive to more pleasure. It's about giving you practices to explore your own sexual anatomy. So I have guided audios to help you do this, and then providing you with communication skills so that you can invite your partner into this exploration with you. And it really is about getting women to feel more confident in their sensuality and their sexuality, and that to let them feel that it will be different, but it can be better in midlife, and things will not be like they were when you were in your 20s and 30s. They can be better because your body's changed. And so it's really a journey of exploring what I call new pathways to pleasure. Your whole body is a zone of pleasure. And so I give women instructions and guidance of how to explore these different erogenous and non-erogenous zones, and really form this new relationship of meeting their sexual selves, sometimes for the first time. I feel like midlife is a new chapter in awakening our sexuality. Sometimes women come to me and they've prioritized the pleasure of their partners. They've seen sex merely as a foundation for having kids, reproduction, and they don't realize there's more on the other side, that there's more freedom when you realize, okay, I don't have to, use sex as a way of having babies anymore, or making sure I don't get pregnant. There's so much freedom. I can use it as a time to explore my sexuality, and there's so many ways that you can do this. So I find it's an exciting time. Midlife is such an exciting time to explore our sexuality. And so that is the group program that I lead women in. And a lot of women share stories, and they share their experiences. And it's really a wonderful experience to support each other through that midlife sexual awakening, as I call it.
And they also realize I have other women here that are going through something similar. So I think there's that camaraderie that is developed through that you say, oh, I'm not so different. I'm like a lot of other women that are going through this as well. You started a podcast, so congratulations again. How did Pleasure in the Pause come about?
Well, it all started with my why, the reason I get up every morning, and that is to empower women to feel more connected to their bodies, pleasure, and power through menopause and beyond. And it was really about, that desire to unmute the shame and silence around pleasure and sexuality, which is so fundamental to our overall health and well-being and how we show up in the world. So each week I dive into informative and thought-provoking conversations with women sharing their personal stories, also experts doctors who have done research in the field of female sexuality, menopause. I love looking at aspects around female spirituality and embodiment. I find a lot of women who are moving into midlife feel that they want to connect with a source that feels greater than themselves. And that can be anything, right, really. And so I love looking into that, looking at female empowerment through the lens of spirituality, and then also defining what your purpose is for you in midlife. So we have so much lived experience, so many gifts, and I feel that really stepping into midlife is a time to embrace your big why, your purpose.
Yeah.
And so I love to have speakers that can inspire women to reflect on that.
Yeah, that's great. And I will encourage everyone to, check out Gabriella's podcast. It is called Pleasure in the Pause. So I do have one or two more questions for you. I'm curious what one of your core pillars of self-care is.
Well, of course, it's prioritizing pleasure. I feel it's not selfish or indulgent. So making time to bring awareness to the things that bring you pleasure and how they make you feel. So it can be anything, that first cup of coffee in the morning, that walk out in nature, and then really asking yourself, what do I feel when I taste or smell that first cup of coffee in the morning? What are my eyes taking in as I walk through nature? How does it feel to move my body? And so when we bring mindful awareness to the things that bring us pleasure, we make more available to us throughout our day. It's our own kind of self-pleasure practice, right? So it doesn't have to be focused on sexual pleasure or anything having to do with the genitals. It can really be about those things that make you feel alive and just light you up from the inside out, and really make those your focus, noticing how they make you feel. And when you do that, you literally are creating new pathways in your brain, new pleasure pathways, as I call them, that really open the field of possibility to experience other forms of pleasure with a partner, with yourself. And when you do this, it really ripples out so beautifully into other aspects of your life, into your work, into your creativity, into your relationships, how you show up in the world. So I feel prioritizing pleasure is fundamental to how we show up in the world.
Nice. I like that a lot. One last question. How can listeners find you, your coaching, and your podcast?
So my coaching platform is GabriellaEspinosa.com, so my full name. And there you can find all of my coaching platform, access to my courses and classes. And then my podcast is pleasureinthepause.com. And there you see all the podcast conversations that I've been having. There's some solo casts there also that I have. There's some blogs there. And you can access the podcast on all podcasting platforms. And you can find me on social media at Gabriella Espinosa.
Wonderful. I will put all that in the show notes. Gabriella Espinosa, thank you so much for being a guest today, and good luck with the podcast.
Oh, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure being here with you today, Michelle.
Follow Asking for a Friend on social media outlets and provide a review and share this show wherever you get your podcasts. Reviews and sharing help us grow.